Big news, everybody! For the first time since July of last year, Nintendo has acknowledged that the Nintendo Entertainment System and the Super NES actually exist! That's right, we're getting more retro games for the Nintendo Switch Online subscription service, including not only titles from those frustratingly ignored consoles, but also the Game Boy. This month brings the 2D shooter Xevious for the NES, Side Pocket for the Super Nintendo, and the Game Boy versions of both BurgerTime Deluxe and Kirby's Dream Land 2. Yeah, that's exciting news, but are any of these games actually worth playing? To answer that question, I decided to flip through the pages of Electronic Gaming Monthly, Super Play, Nintendo Power, and more classic magazines to see what the critics said back when these games first came out. Well, all of them except for Xevious, which came out right before magazines started scoring their reviews. So go and grab your favorite pool cue and a side of fries, because it's time for an episode of Nintendo Switch Online Review Crew that definitely sucks. On purpose.
Nintendo word.
When the Game Boy was first released, gamers around the world hoped that it would be home to a bunch of scaled-down versions of Nintendo Entertainment System games. However, due to its limited hardware, what we ended up getting were a bunch of upgraded arcade games from the early to mid-1980s. This includes BurgerTime, the 1982 smash hit from Data East, where you help Chef Peter Pepper construct some of the biggest hamburgers that you're ever gonna see. It's a simple premise that worked in the early days of the video games industry. But what about in 1991 and on the Game Boy? Well, that depends entirely on what magazine you looked at. Mean Machines ended up giving the game a 90%, explaining that the game starts out easy, but on the later levels, the going is really manic, and you have to really think to make sure that you squash all the ingredients into the burger without getting trapped. If you're after a very jolly platform jape, this is well worth looking out for. Nintendo Power, on the other hand, gave the game a 3 out of 5, a much lower score. They were unimpressed with the challenge and felt that the Game Boy version had slightly better than average graphics and play control. And then there's Nintendo Magazine System, which landed somewhere in the middle with a 78%. Using the absolute crummiest scan that I could find, NMS concluded that this port is low on graphics but high on playability. BurgerTime is a real laugh, although it does get repetitive after the first few levels. Alright, let's be honest here. This is going to be one of those criticisms that you could level against any arcade game from the early 1980s. It was a very repetitive time. The problem with bringing classic sports games to modern consoles is that there are usually teams, players, leagues, and maybe even a coach that needs to be paid all before the fun can start. Thankfully, that's not the case when it comes to pool, allowing Data East to bring a Side Pocket without changing a single thing. While not as exciting as football or as hard-hitting as hockey, this billiard simulator is easy to pick up and offers a surprisingly awesome soundtrack full of chilled tunes. But were the critics into it? That's the real question. As it turns out, the answer is yes, for the most part. GamePro gave Side Pocket a strong 4 out of 5 in their February 1994 issue. Side Pocket is a great game for pool enthusiasts and casual video game pool players alike. There are plenty of great options and genuine pool strategies to keep serious players interested, and yet it's simple enough to play without the manual. Whether you're slick with a stick or a fool at pool, you'll enjoy Side Pocket. The British press also seemed to be into a good game of billiards, as SNES Force gave the game a solid 7 out of 10. Superplay, on the other hand, gave it an 86%, the highest score that I could find for Side Pocket. Not only did they praise the accessible gameplay and longevity, but they also loved the chill soundtrack. Did I mention that great selection of cocktail lounge tunes? Well, I should have done. There, I'm mentioning them now. And Side Pocket is even better because of them. Consider it and prepare to be tempted. Now, when it comes to the lowest score, we once again turn our heads to Nintendo Power. Giving the game a 2.9 out of 5, the magazine complained that there are fewer pool games included than in Championship Pool. That said, they did say that the control is easy and precise, and the trick shooting option is challenging. Still, that score isn't exactly a ringing endorsement. See who you agree with when you queue up Side Pocket and its chill soundtrack.
Old people. Slackers.
Get a clue.
Get a job. Get a haircut.
Get some hair.
Some respect.
Have some prunes.
Why, I ought to take this and just give it one body.
With new games like Ken Griffey Jr.'s Major League Baseball, Tetris Plus, and Donkey Kong Land 3, the world is a better place.
Nice earrings. Nice hearing aid.
What?
I sure hope that you took the time to complete Kirby's Dream Land last month when Nintendo released it with their big wave of Game Boy games, because everybody's favorite Super Sucker is back for an even better sequel. Released 3 years after the 1992 original, this is yet another masterfully crafted side-scrolling platformer from HAL Laboratory. This game picks up where Kirby's adventure left off, adding 3 new animal friends to help Kirby defeat King DDD and the evil Dark Matter. Personally, I like this sequel even better than the original. But what did the critics say? Most of the magazine reviews fell into one of two camps. They either loved the game, or they thought it was just okay. With an average score of 7.6 out of 10, Electronic Gaming Monthly ended up doing both in a single issue. Ed, who loved the original, concluded that the sequel is even better. The graphics are the best you can expect on the Game Boy, and the control is top-notch. There's a lot of technique in Kirby's Dream Land 2. Hardcore gamers shouldn't pass this one up. Sushi X, on the other hand, warmed up to Kirby, but only gave it a 7 out of 10. Okay, I guess I'm just a softie for the little cream puff Kirby. I actually got into this game, believe it or not. I guess old Sushi may have to reevaluate his stance on the Game Boy. Speaking of things that you might not believe, Nintendo Power gave Kirby's Dream Land 2 a very similar score with a 3.8 out of 5. That's surprisingly low for a Nintendo-published game. GamePro went the opposite direction, giving the game a stellar 4.5 out of 5. This is exactly the kind of game that they love. If you've been waiting for more easygoing, easy-to-beat Kirby charm, your wait is over. While not everything is new in Dreamland 2, everything is definitely fun. And I guess that brings us once again to the infamous Game Players review. If you watched our recap of Kirby's first game, then you already know that a Game Players editor was incredibly confused when they reviewed the original Dreamland. You see, I'm bringing this review back for Dreamland 2 because I'm pretty sure that's actually the game that's being reviewed here. After 2 16-bit titles, Kirby's making his way back to handhelds with Kirby's Dream Land. Kirby's uncanny Hoover-like ability to suck up enemies and spit them out as a weapon is original. However, that is the only original thing in this game. It's Mario, but instead of jumping on heads, you suck and blow. There's nothing spectacular or fancy here. It's just fun. Well, that review definitely fits better when talking about Kirby's Dream Land 2. I still can't get over the fact that they never once spelled the name correctly and attributed the game to Rare. Man, I hate this review so much. Thankfully, I don't hate Kirby's Dream Land 2, which you can play right now on the Switch.
What are friends? Friends are there to pick you up when you're feeling a little down. Friends are there to rearrange someone's face when they're acting like a clown. Friends are a hamster, a fish, and an owl in Kirby's Dream Land 2. If you ain't fighting on their side, well, man, I'd pity you.
Kirby's back, and the Flappy One brought 3 rowdy friends. It's a punked-up, powered-up Kirby in Kirby's Dream Land 2. New for Game Boy and Super Game Boy.
Will you be my friend?
Hey, thanks for watching us analyze these classic reviews. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post one of these episodes every single time Nintendo adds retro games to their service. We have a whole playlist full of these types of reviews. Now, here's the question I have for you. Is this a sign of Nintendo fully supporting the Nintendo Switch Online service? And with the 3DS and Wii U eShops coming to a close, will we start to see more classic games make the jump to the Switch? Let me see your answers in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back tomorrow with a review of The Wreck, followed by a PlayStation Plus Review Crew episode featuring Ridge Racer Type 4. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,